Welcome back, life science learners. Trust that you've enjoyed the break. Let's get back into the lesson. In our lesson, we're going to continue looking at the skills required to write an essay in life sciences. So, how to answer an essay question? Guys, remember that the essay question is a question that requires you to be able to assimilate information from various different sections. Often we get learners frantic about the essay question, thinking that there's a lot of information that they have to write on a specific topic. Let's look at the essay topic, let's look at how we unpack that, and let's look at the skills required to write this essay. As I mentioned, that the essay in the final examination is allocated a total of 20 marks. To answer this question, it requires that we plan very carefully. Let's look at the planning steps using the following essay question. So here's a question that is taken from a previous exam. The question reads, it's often question 4, and that's in section C. Towards the end of the paper, this is the question that you're often left with. I generally remind learners to keep around 30 minutes for this last question. Again, let's read this. Sometimes the paternity of a son or a daughter is disputed. Let's read further. Describe sex determination in humans and explain how blood grouping and DNA profiling are used in paternity testing. So guys, as you pick this up, there's one component there. We've got to describe sex determination in humans. Second is explain how blood grouping, and third, DNA are used in paternity testing. So it's important that when we read the topic, we're able to understand and interpret the different aspects of that. And as I've done, you would see that I've broken this up into 3 components. Sex determination, explaining how blood grouping is used to determine paternity, as well as using DNA to determine paternity. An important note is that no marks will be allowed or awarded for answers in the form of a table, flow charts, or diagrams. And guys, I know that often we tend to rush through, and towards the end of the exam, we want to rush through and write out an essay in the form of a flow chart or simply listing some points. Unfortunately, that's not going to get you the marks. So let's look at how to write this essay after we've planned. So the first step, as I mentioned, is plan and write an essay. Step 1, read the essay questions thoroughly, as I've done, to determine the topic that is being covered. Underline the keywords in the essay question that provide clues to the different topics. And as you noted, I underlined the different parts, and we investigated that this topic had 3 different components to it. The next part would be interpret and analyze the essay question. Identify the aspects of the process required for each topic, and we identified 3 aspects. You may need to read the question once more to enable you to do this. And as I mentioned, if you read this the second time, it helps you to be able to be clear in your thinking around what specifically is required on this topic. Write the first draft of your essay in a logical and organized manner, linking each aspect that is discussed. So I often encourage the learners to have a very quick draft that you write up, and write it as you start your question. Let that be an overview of your planning. Put some ideas around each concept into that part of the draft. This should help you to obtain a higher mark from the 3 marks allocated for the synthesis of your essay. It's important that you recognize that there is 3 marks allocated for the synthesis. And if you think about synthesis, synthesis is often the development of your thinking around a topic. So here, how would you synthesize the determination of using of sex determination in humans? So you've got to think together and synthesize how this happens in terms of lay out the X and Y chromosomes, lay out the X and X chromosomes in female, and show and describe that process of how sex determination happens. So it's important that in being able to plan that the synthesis does occur. The third step is, in your plan or your draft of the essay, you may take the form of a flow chart. It's okay in your plan to be able to put together some concepts and link them with arrows and ideas so that when you are going to write that essay down, that you're able to link the concepts together. And that is the value of being able to plan an essay. But you got to note that the final answer cannot be in the form of a flow diagram. So you've got to ensure that you've got sufficient time to now be able to ink that into a paragraph or paragraphs having different ideas, concepts synthesized in each paragraph. A mind map is a useful way to brainstorm the ideas in your planning. It then becomes easy to structure your essay, and it's easier to organize all of that information logically. So I've given you an overview of what a simple mind map could be. So as I discussed this, we recognize that there's paternity testing. We put together the one concept as sex determination. We then had to determine how blood group is used in paternity testing, and then finally how DNA profiling is used. So again, a simple mind map that has illustrated the different components in this essay. The third or the fourth step is write out the final version of your essay. It's important that you put a line across the plan of your essay only if you've written the essay. So often you do an elaborate plan, but you now haven't got to writing that essay. I would then caution you against not putting a line across that. If that's all the planning that you've done, and if you've not been able to get to writing the essay, well, I suppose leave the plan without scratching that off. It's important that if you do write an essay, that you strike out the plan and that you let the reader or the examiner know that that's your final essay. Finally, you read the question again one more time, check if the answer corresponds to the question. As you do that, it gives you a context to what you've left out, what you've missed out in terms of that. Often try and leave some space between a paragraph so that you can go in and add some bit of more information. Proofread your essay carefully. This is the opportunity for you to pick out spelling mistakes, incomplete words, sentences, or ideas. And that often is linked to the time that you have in completing this essay. So guys, it's important that you know that break down the content, synthesize in the plan, and then proofread to see that you've completed an essay with the main concepts in it. I trust that we run out of time in these essays, but I know that in the planning that you do, in the logical thinking that you do, you're able to synthesize a complete essay having all the content that you need in a very pressurized situation. Practice these. Let's have a little break. When we get back, we're going to look at a few more questions and how we unpack that using this concept of unpacking and planning an essay. Short break, and then I'll see you in a bit.